I am 43 and have been married to my wife Gilly, 39, for 17 years. We have two boys ages 15 and 12. It feels strange to write about my marriage after 17 years together, as if it were any other relationship. Our marriage has its fair share of highs and lows. It wasn't anything major for the first 10 to 11 years, but 6 years ago, we experienced a major setback in life. My warehouse caught fire. The insurance paid for the losses, but it took me years to recover. Just before the accident, we had purchased a new house with a mortgage. We had to sell our house and return to the previous one. We couldn't afford to keep my car, so I had to sell it. Billy did not agree to sell hers, so I had to forgo mine. She was a stay-at-home mom, so I used to use her car when I needed it. During that time, our marriage hit rock bottom. Gilly was not in the mood to compromise her lifestyle. We were living a fairly normal life before the crisis struck. Everything went downhill all at once. It wasn't just for her, it was for all of us. However, she acted as if she were the only one who was suffering. She refused to downgrade her amenities, whether it was her car, a shopping spree, or monthly spa and maintenance appointments. I had to juggle several responsibilities at the time. It wasn't just about starting the business from scratch. I also had to make sure there was food on the table and cover the two children's school expenses. Is it about being understanding and supportive? Gilly acted as a whiner, and her attitude annoyed me. She also became resentful of me. I became distant from her. She would gaslight the situation and play the victim. She didn't understand why I was suddenly summoned. She did not even try to understand. All she did was badmouth me in front of her family, who banded together to accuse me of mistreating her, ganging up in the sense that they would intrude unnecessarily and meddle in my affairs. Gilly has always remained close to her family. She has a large and connected family tree. Her parents live across the street, and two of her siblings are also housed within a mile. Gilly had an irritating habit of involving her parents and siblings in our private affairs. I hated it so much. Not that her family was bad or unfair to me, but I didn't like their involvement in her business. Whenever I refused to discuss my problems with them, she would say they were family, and families share their problems with one another. No doubt they would occasionally assist me, but it also made me feel incompetent. Anyway, I was able to rebuild my business. It took me 5 or 6 years, but I was able to restart my business and accelerate its growth. I expected my personal life to improve as well. We began taking vacations again, hiking on weekends, and going out for dinner and lunch. My children, who were also concerned about our finances, were gradually recovering from frugality. However, Gilly remained distant and cold. Our anniversary was last month, and I planned a surprise celebration for her in the same way that we did before. I figured it would be an excellent way to rekindle our lost spark. She was overjoyed to have received all of the gifts, and our romance was rekindled. However, this only lasted a short time. After a week, it was back to square one. She was still the same. That was when I realized I had moved beyond the financial crisis. Until now, I blamed our relationship's demise on financial problems. But now it's all sorted. The next day, I had an obvious reason for thinking of an affair. I started looking into the situation. I tried to check her phone, but it was password protected and I couldn't get into it. I paid close attention to her schedule. For all these years, I was too ignorant to notice the red flag. Perhaps after working 14, 16 hours a day, snooping on my wife was the last thing that came to mind. Now that I was more free, I began to spend more time with my sons. During one of those conversations, I discovered that Gilly was going out every other afternoon, and sometimes every day. I asked my kids where she was going, and they said they didn't know. Gilly never informed them. I purchased a tracking device and installed it in her car. The next day, she went out in the afternoon, and I followed her. She drove nearly 20 miles and checked into a hotel. I parked my car a few buildings back and walked to the hotel, hoping to avoid being noticed by her or her acquaintance. By the time I arrived, she had vanished. She was nowhere to be found. I walked in and took a seat in the hotel cafe. I waited there for an hour to see if anyone I knew showed up, but I didn't see anyone I knew come in. I departed after a while. After returning halfway, it occurred to me that I should go back and wait for them to leave. I made a U-turn and returned there. This time, I waited in my car. After an hour, she emerged. That's when I spotted her partner. I did not recognize him. Perhaps he was a friend she made outside of our social circle. I captured photos and videos of them hugging and kissing at the exit gate. She is indeed cheating on me, and I'm aware that this has been going on for a long time. Perhaps since the demise of my business, to say the least. Despite the fact that she is clearly flirting with that man, it's not enough to confront her. She could make up any excuse to cover this up. And I do not want to blow my chances. I want something concrete, such as their conversations, videos, or actual actions. I was looking for different ways to do that and came across this subreddit. Anyone have similar experiences or suggestions on how I should proceed? I would really appreciate it. Thanks. Why would you try to cover it up when you have photos and video evidence that appear to be solid proof of an affair to me? Update 1. I spoke with a few agencies to learn about their processes and fees, but none of them were appealing, so I decided to try it on my own first. And if I didn't make a breakthrough, I'd hire API. One day, Gilly was busy in the kitchen. I had my phone in the closet and asked Julie for her phone so she could call me. She unlocked it and handed it to me without suspecting anything. I installed a hidden clone app on her phone. It took us a few minutes and I was finished. I then accessed her phone's data remotely. The first thing I did was look into her chats. I exported all of the chat and affair partner information from there. I also discovered an email address in her inbox. Their photographs and videos from the gallery. I was in a hurry because I didn't know how this app worked. I was scared. What if she receives a notification from this cloning or so? I wanted to collect as much information as possible. After receiving all of the information from her phone, I went to my warehouse and thoroughly reviewed it. The chat was 6 months old, but it appeared that they had been seeing each other for years. They were both professing their love for each other and talking dirty about their partners. They also made it clear that they had no intention of marrying or divorcing us. They were enjoying their time together while cursing their partners. They posted explicit photos of themselves, but no video of them together. Their partner's wife has a good professional job and is away for 10 hours per day. Their partner is a baseball coach at a school, so he is free after school and goes around drilling other people's wives. Their partners. Family background. I discovered through his social media accounts that I now have enough evidence to break up his marriage. I'm going to contact his wife. But first, I want to expose the leech that lives in my house. I don't want her to escape with dignity. I want to humiliate and embarrass her, just like she did to me during my financial crisis. I'm just not sure how to get some professional and legal advice before taking any further action. Do you have enough evidence to go after her legally? At the same time, with all of this evidence, you may not need a private investigator. At this point, it appears that you are simply rehashing old ground. Update 2. The last update ended with me discussing how I had gathered evidence by cloning her phone to mine. I was concerned about the app's functionality and didn't want to get caught, but it was discreet and remained hidden for 2 weeks before I disabled it. I'd gathered enough evidence by then. I was disgusted to watch their live chats. She used to sext him while sitting in front of the kids and me. She described what she was wearing both inside and outside, as well as how she was lying on the couch, spreading herself and yearning for him. My children were right next to her when she said, "I wish you were here, on top of me." It was really gross. I'm not sure how I kept myself together in those situations. I mean, understand this. You were sleeping next to your wife, and she was texting her lover about how she wanted to be touched right now. She was even rubbing her hands against my back while discussing some of these desires. When I retrieved data from her phone, I feel like strangling her in her sleep. I only found a few of the photos they had shared. It was mostly selfies with new dresses or lingerie. I assumed they weren't sharing explicit ones. I was wrong. They were sharing naked. But she deleted it immediately. As a result, it was not backed up. Now that I was tracking it in real time, I was able to retrieve it all. They shared nude photos as well as short videos of themselves touching themselves. Meanwhile, as evidence accumulated, I devised a perfect plan to expose this to the world. Read about her family. I sent an email to all of her close family members, including her parents, siblings, godmother, aunt, uncles, and some of her best friends. I invited them to a surprise party but did not reveal the reason. The invitation simply stated, "We're expecting happy news." I made it clear that I did not want Gilly or the kids to find out. I managed to pull off a surprise anniversary celebration a few months ago, so I was confident in this one as well. The children were on board with me for the preparation the last time, but this time I needed to make sure they were out of it, or at least during the confrontation. How much I despise Gilly. I can't let her children see her like that. People who received my invitation assumed that I had purchased a new home because it was neither an anniversary nor birthday. They could have assumed we were expecting parents. However, it would not have come as a surprise to Gilly. I asked them to try to work together to make the surprise more impactful, and I also asked Gilly's sister to pick up champagne and cake along the way. She gladly did so on the supposed evening before they arrived. I sent my kids to their friends' houses for a sleepover. Gilly couldn't be bothered to ask what was going on. Her parents and siblings arrived with champagne and cake while she was busy communicating with her lover about her desires. That's when Gilly asked me what was going on. I informed her that I had news to share. She immediately informed her lover about us, stating that she would be gone for a few hours and would resume sexting once I finished packing. I sent a lot of hugs and kisses, then archived all the chats and turned off the notifications. After that, she was quite the clever witch. She was all over me, hugging you and showering me with love. As everyone had guessed, she too assumed it was news about our new house or something similar. She couldn't stop talking about how lucky she was to have me as her husband. I just smiled while waiting for others to arrive. When it was time, I asked Gilly to sit with me in the center. She held my hand in excitement. The projector was ready in the living room. The first slideshow began with her lips locked with a fair partner, and before anyone could react, it transitioned to another with their explicit chats and larger fonts and nudes. I could feel Gilly's palms sweating and shivering as she asked me to stop. When it became too much for everyone, the slideshow began to play automatically. Her siblings insisted on discussing her private matters separately. I literally pounced on them, saying, "Why should we discuss this privately when all of my matters have been discussed? They're open in front of you all. Remember when I asked Gilly to sell her car and she called all of you here, and you all asked me to sell mine? In case of an emergency, I had to take public transportation or beg her for a ride. Whenever we had a financial crisis, you all came here to help me. So today, as we all will, you should help us resolve the issue." The slideshow on the projector was still running, so the room felt quiet. Her mom yelled at me, "What do you want?" I responded to her with the same tone. "Ask your daughter to confess everything in front of everyone." Gilly was crying all along, her face buried between her poems. She refused to say anything. After a lot of nudging and me getting upset with her family, she looked at me and said, "You've made an entire movie on me. What else would you like to listen to?" I mentioned everything else. How and when did it start? Why did you feel you needed an off-air partner? And what were your future plans? Her parents and uncle left, claiming they didn't want to be a part of this shit show. I did not want them to meddle in my affairs again. Despite her numerous breakdowns, her siblings and friends stood back and supported her. She confessed everything, as I had expected. It all began when our financial crisis struck. She claimed she had no intention of cheating on me or anything, but I was emotionally unavailable at the time, and she felt lonely. It's amazing to think that if anyone needed help at the time, it was me. I was the one juggling all of the balls simultaneously. Instead of assisting me, she turned. How? She stated that we never intended to go physical. We started as friends and nothing more. I found solace in him. He was also lonely. His wife is away for work for 10 hours each day, and so were you. We connected over this. I apologize. I had no idea when this emotional thing became physical, and we began to enjoy each other's company physically. She went on like, "I'm sorry. I am a terrible person. Please do not show this to her children. They're going to hate me. I'm a terrible mother and all that." Her friends and siblings were comforting her. Why? Because she was crying and pleading. No one attempted to understand my anguish. I developed the image of a bad guy after humiliating my wife in front of everyone. She shot me a look. "What did you get for bringing this up in front of everyone? We could have sorted this out privately." I know there will be many people here who will ask me the same question. I believe I have adequately explained why I did this. I am not going to defend myself any further. I have been through enough. I've spent more than half my life working my tail off for my family, and this is what I get in exchange. Now I only care about myself and my well-being. On the one hand, a family member would find it difficult to witness such an event. However, how can you sit back and continue to support a friend or sister after learning that they cheated on their spouse? When there are financial issues in a relationship, I believe it is a true testament when people work things out together and support one another during difficult times rather than fleeing. It really says something when someone as weak as your wife can cheat on their partner simply because they are lonely. That's like saying I was hungry but there wasn't anything in the fridge. So I went and kissed the neighbor, hoping he'd make me a snack. Update 3. I am grateful beyond words for your support during this difficult time. So, following the confrontation, I served her with divorce papers. Yes, I prepared it ahead of time while gathering evidence. She pleaded with me. Divorce is not the solution. It would devastate our children's lives. If you want, I can break up with this guy right now and never see him again. I promise to be as good a wife and mother as I have been all these years. I deserve one chance for everything I've done for you and the kids. I claimed she ruined our children's lives the moment she allowed another man into her bed. And divorce will not cause any additional harm to their life. She questioned why we were going to tell them. I said they were almost adults and should understand the situation. I won't hide the divorce from them, but we can explain why it's appropriate for their age. I told her I would be leaving and she could stay in the house until the lease expired. I don't want to live in this house with her family and friends. The children were free to stay with whomever they wanted. Everyone eventually left, and I couldn't bear having to share the roof with her alone. So I left and spent the night in my warehouse. I arrived home the next morning to find the children already there. I told Gilly to talk to the children about our separation. We sat them down and told them we were separating. They acted quite more mature than we were expecting. Maybe they sensed this to be coming. Children are quick to sense a broken home. I told them I would be moving out while their mother would stay in this house until the lease lasts or until she figures out our next move. When we told them they could choose to live with any of their parents, they asked which one of us was getting a boyfriend-girlfriend home. It shocked me. I looked at Gilly and said, no one is getting remarried in the near future. They said they needed time to think. We gave in space and time. Meanwhile, I packed my stuff and loaded it onto my truck. I had found a place for myself, but I was yet to get the possession. It was due in 2 weeks, so I decided to stay at my warehouse until then. While leaving, I told my children that they're in no hurry to make the decision and they could let me know whenever they want to move in with me. Gilly came to me and asked, "So is that it? Are you never going to forgive me?" I said, "No, not anytime soon," and left. After setting up a makeshift room for myself at the warehouse, I reached out to the heir partner's wife. How could I not tell the truth to that woman who had been working so hard for her family, yet getting betrayed? I found her email ID on a professional social network and emailed her the detail along with my introduction and contact information. I got a call from her within 10 minutes. She was struggling for words. I told her I understood her pain. I've been through a similar experience. She sobbed and said she had been working so hard for all these years so that her family could have a good life. A third partner was an aspiring baseball player in his 20s when they got married. He got into an accident that injured his torso and he was deemed unfit to play baseball. So he now met her small kids. He doesn't make much, so she has to work that hard to secure their daughter's future. And this is how he pays her back for her love and sacrifice. I narrated my story and she was sorry for me. I told her I had served a divorce notice to Gilly. She said she needs to think about it thoroughly. She thanked me and hung up. A week later today, Gilly's father called me and apologized. He said he was sorry that I had to go through all this because of Gilly. Honestly, his apology meant nothing to me. I have been through enough. I'll be moving to my new home tomorrow. It is far from the place I used to live. I don't want to bump into Gilly or her family or friends. I know that. I'll have to see her face sometimes due to my children, but that would be it. Right now, all I want is some peaceful, quiet time with myself. I'll be offline from all platforms for some time. Thanks for all the support and advice. Really appreciate it. I'll update the thread if anything progresses in the future. I can't believe she had the audacity to ask you if you were going to forgive her. Not only that, but the fact that she has said divorce was going to ruin your children's lives. She's so out of touch with reality as far as she's concerned. She's done nothing wrong. And I'm sorry you have to deal with all of that gaslighting. You were right to leave her, OB. Thank goodness you have a self-respect. She ruined the family the moment she found solace in another man. Thank you for listening to the story today. Please like and subscribe if you like what you hear. Please leave a comment to share your thoughts on what happened. Please do not hesitate to contact me if you have a story to tell about your or another person's situation. Take care.